So, good morning, everybody. My name is Giovanni Maccani. I work at Ideas for Change, and I apologize not being able to do this presentation live, but I'll be unfortunately unavailable on September 2nd. It's a pity because the agenda looks really interesting, and I wish you all the best for the day. So today I'm going to talk for the next 20-30 minutes about citizen engagement, and specifically how we've conducted citizen engagement in the WeCount project, which you've heard about in the previous presentations. And I'll talk to you more about what is the methodology that we've followed and the framework that we've developed, as well as the tools to effectively engage citizens in the project. So I'm going to share my screen with my presentation. Let's see if I can make it. So it should be fine now. So as said, my name is Giovanni Maccani. I work at Ideas for Change in the research team. A little bit about my background is in engineering. I've studied in Italy. I have a master in engineering, and then I moved to Ireland, where I worked for Intel for a couple of years. Then I became faculty in a business school for a couple of years. And back in 2019, I moved to Barcelona, and I joined Ideas for Change. So Ideas for Change is an SME based here in Barcelona, Spain. And what we focus on is basically two main pillars, research and consultancy. I work in the research sides, whereby we focus, well, we have different focuses. We've been involved in several European and non-European projects, but I guess one of our main expertise and experiences is about citizen engagement and citizen science, which you've heard about. And this is the idea of engaging citizens in every steps of a scientific inquiry, basically, in scientific research. So just as some examples of projects we've been or we are involved in. So one is Cities Health, where we leverage citizen science to investigate the relationship between exposure to air pollution and mental health, in collaboration with the Public Health Institute here in Barcelona. It's called IS Global. The project is almost finishing. Another one is food mapping. And the idea here was to leverage citizen science to understand how people experience food environments and how people can contribute to improve them towards more inclusive, sustainable, and healthy food environments and related experiences. In this project, we asked communities to go and do shopping for a given recipe, which was a lentil soup, chosen because it has a lot of ingredients. And with an app, people were documenting their experience, where they were going, when, why, how much they spent. And then we did a workshop of cooking together, where we cooked that lentil soup and we reached some conclusions about food environments here in Barcelona. Denosis, another one, it's about odor pollution. Again, novelty for the environmental policy discourse in many countries. Odors are something that annoy us every day. And the power here through citizen science is about mapping odors episodes. And then through retrotrajectory techniques of factometry, as well as dispersion modeling, try and trace it back to the emitting activities, create dialogues between them, the citizen community, and the local councils to improve their practices, basically. And finally, another project we've been involved in is DLT4EU, which was an accelerator of blockchain-based technology for social innovation. Again, a key focus on citizens. The idea, again, is engaging citizens in every steps of a research inquiry. Right? And we've done that across a number of fields, including WeCount. That's in the context of sustainable mobility. So this presentation then will focus about really what was the foundation of engagement and citizen science in WeCount, what was the methodology, as well as some examples of how we've conducted that. So what we're going to talk about really is what we've developed that we call the WeCount engagement framework. So Again, WeCount, as you've probably heard, is still a project that's developed across 5 different countries: Spain, Slovenia, Wales, Ireland, and obviously Belgium. So the idea is that when you involve citizens in a research project, what you need to face is really that, especially when you have this distributed pilots or case studies type of project, is that every single context is particular. Every single context has its own issues, its own communities, its own demographics, its own policies, of course. And so the challenge for us was really to devise what we call the methodology or a framework that could guide local citizen science activities, could inspire local case study or pilot leaders in engaging citizens effectively, but at the same time acknowledging that it needed to be flexible enough to be applicable across different contexts. So the idea came about not to focus on a strict step-by-step recipe book or methodology, but really focusing on the concept of a toolkit. So the idea is to give 5 different phases, a number of sub-phases with the key things that need to be addressed across the different phases of citizen engagement and scientific research, and propose within them a number of methods, techniques, and tools on how to address the different objectives within each phase, but in a way that this could be adapted to the local context. It's not just translations, but really adapting it to what people believe is relevant or what their experiences tell us is relevant. So the 5 phases included are scoping, community building, co-design, data collection, data analysis, and awareness, reflection, and legacy. I'm going to go through each of these with some examples of tools and other methods that we've developed and used across the different case studies. So first one, scoping and community building. Really, the idea here at the beginning is to really bring down the project narrative to something that's locally relevant. How do we engage locally? How do we understand the local context? How do we position the initial narrative in the local context? So the initial project narrative for WeCount was about empowering citizens to count traffic in front of their street, to have a voice and influence policy making when it comes to sustainable mobility in the area where they live, or they work, or they spend time. So from this initial narrative, this needed to be brought down to the local level. So what does it mean, traffic counting? Traffic counting, obviously, by nature, can have different legs. Could be road safety, could be speed compliance, could be urban design, among space usage, among other issues or other topics that can be addressed. So the idea here is to really get an understanding of what's the mobility context in the city or in the area where the case study is carried out, as well as engaging citizens to make them, to co-create a problem formulation phase together with them, based on how they experience mobility, how they experience traffic, and what their matter of concern really is. So what goes in here? So first of all, what we need to do is to really achieve a situated understanding of the traffic issue. So what we did basically in every city is start with general desk research and try and understand, okay, first of all, what is the general perception within the city? How do you perceive traffic? Is it a problem? Is it not? When is it? What worries you the most? Is it about health? Is it about time? Is it about, what is it about? Safety? So that already allows you to narrow it down to the specific context, basically. Also, in parallel to this, what we needed to do at this stage was to really try and engage the different relevant departments within the public authority. So what is it, the matter of concerns that's emerging from citizens? Is it health? Is it road safety? If that's the road safety, we needed to engage with the road safety department in Barcelona City Council, for example. Together with it, and that's a very good example, comes from Wales and the pilot or the case study in Cardiff, we needed really to understand what is the framework or the landscape, the policy landscape with respect to mobility. This was not only useful for us to understand and position the project within the current policy framework, but really to gain credibility with both public sector and the citizens in terms of we know what we're talking about and what we're targeting. Second subphase within the scoping and community building is to really engage citizens and co-create the problem formulation. So how do they perceive mobility? What are the issues that they experience every day? By doing so, also, you start building the community. So what we've done for this case was, for this phase, was really to have a problem formulation workshop. And what we've given them initially was a canvas that's depicted here on the right side that really, we call it traffic timeline. And we were asking people, that was an online meeting, so they could use the Miro software to put their own post-its, but really, how does your neighborhood move during the day? And what's the mobility like during the year? So people could start and populate this canvas with, at 9 a.m., there's a high load of traffic. At 8 p.m. as well, people coming back from work. At 1 a.m., there's the bins collector that come and make noise. And the same during the year. So this not only allowed us to understand what's the perceived mobility within the area where citizens live, but also to stimulate a discussion, right? And that was really fruitful. So by the end of this exercise, we were really able to narrow down the mobility issue as perceived by citizens and narrow it down across different matters of concern. Actually, what came out in Barcelona and Madrid was that air quality was the main effect of traffic that was concerning people. In conjunction to that, we were also asking them, okay, let's train together. How would it be your ideal mobility situation in your street? Just to get a target and a to-be opinion, I guess, from the citizens involved. Third is really, once you understood and you started building your community, you understood how traffic is perceived, you start bringing it down to a number of matter of concern, you start looking also at who are the stakeholders in this ecosystem. And this is not only stakeholders in terms of people that have an influence on policy or companies that have an influence on mobility in general, but really trying to think also who are the actors that could be involved, who could potentially be our community champions. So what we did in Barcelona is we used Google Maps and we mapped every single civic organization, NGO, official station of air quality, as well as other entities that could have been engaged into the project or could have been relevant for at some phases during the case study. So obviously, in parallel to all this, there needs to be a continuous effort on community building. This comes mainly from communication and dissemination effort, but it's really important to produce materials in local language, souvenirs, flyers, posters. We have a WeCount sticker, for example, that we were pasting around the city. We developed a website in Spanish for the Spanish community. But really here, it's about conducting and sustaining a coherent and long-lasting communication effort. Especially in projects like European projects, where case studies are usually scheduled to last more than 1 year. This is of crucial importance throughout the project. So it may be relatively easy to convince people to come to the first workshop, but the most difficult part is to keep the engagement, keep the motivation of participants throughout the project. So my argument is always, it's more difficult to get people to come to your second workshop than to the first, right? So by the end of this scoping and community building, what we achieved was basically a positioning of the WeCount narrative within the context of Barcelona and Madrid and of the other different case studies. And we started building a community which met, which also co-explored what the main problems experience could be. One thing that happened in Barcelona, well, at the end of these exercises, what we've achieved was that traffic and air quality was the main concern that emerged from the different interactions that we had, but also an urban design problem that's specifically related to the Telraam technology that's being used. So basically, the urban design in Barcelona is different than northern countries and Belgium specifically, in that buildings are typically higher, there's a lot of balconies, and in short, it was really hard to find suitable locations for the sensors. So what we decided to do was we really wanted to engage more people than those that could actually host the sensor and generate good data. So we integrated another initiative whereby we distributed 1,000 strawberry plants that were acting as air quality monitoring stations. So the idea was that participants received a plant, and after 3 months they needed to cut a leaf that was put into an envelope, sent to a laboratory that was doing a electromagnetic analysis on the material that's on the leaf, basically, and giving back information about the quality, the air quality on their balconies or windows. So this may seem deviating from the scope of WeCount, but really the most important thing was first, to accommodate the request of citizens to cross traffic data with air quality data, but secondly, also to allow people that did not have a sensor, a Telraam sensor, to engage into the project. Also, another issue that occurred, obviously, was COVID, and that required a lot of resilience from all the partners in terms of that this methodology, as well as all the other resources and the plans for the project, were developed thinking about a lot of hands-on activities, physical workshops, and so on. These were not possible, so we needed to be resilient, and we moved online. So all the workshops, interactions have happened online on video conferencing. We've used several different software, and for the delivery of sensors, we've designed a WeCount toolbox that was distributed to citizens or delivered to citizens that applied and were found to be suitable through bike delivery. But I guess the point here is that this is all agile process, right? So you can have a methodology, a framework, but then you need to be flexible. You need to adapt it to the different situations. And actually, the COVID situation demanded a lot of resilience from all the partners in WeCount. Second part is co-design. So once you have your community, your problem established, your stakeholders mapped, and understanding of what's the context like, also from a policy perspective, you start a co-design effort. Again, it's important to include citizens in this effort for several reasons. First of all, they understand what the process will look like. They understand what commitment is expected by them. They can plan in advance on when and how they want to participate. So first of all, we needed to co-design the data collection protocol. So we had the sensor that was pretty much given, and that has a wonderful suite of features, if that makes sense, that you've learned about. So how many cars, pedestrians, bicycle, trucks pass in front, at what speed, at what time, and different types of visualizations that you've seen. Right, so here it was really about, okay, let's have a calendar. Let's see how long data collection protocol will last, when we will have workshops, when we will have different interactions, and what do we ask to you. Right? Also, in this stage, what we did was we could not undertake a workshop where people were installing the sensors, which was actually were assembling the sensors, which was actually a key part of the methodology for people to get aware of what they were using, and also to appreciate the fact that they were part of an experimentation, of an experimental project. This was not being possible, but we did produce some material and tutorials on how the sensors are assembled to allow people to appreciate what they're doing and what's the sensor they're using, and to learn about Internet of Things, of course. Second thing was about supplying and installing Telraam. So In this case, what we did was, obviously we could not do it again in person, and also it wouldn't have been possible because people have to do it from their home. So here what we did at the project level was we produced a kind of considerable amount of material targeted for different type of demographics. So there was the Telraam website that was providing a guideline, step-by-step guideline. There was a video for the installation. We produced a printed step-by-step guide, and also a longer, well, from the initial experiences, it emerged the need to produce also a longer spoken installation tutorial, especially for elderly people and people that are not as digitally savvy. So at this point, an important element here was about what we call the train the trainer approach. So what we were trying to do here was to supply or deliver sensors to what we call community champions, so they could experience it, learn about it, and then transfer it to their own networks and communities. Third and important aspect is also about the project governance and the data governance of the project. So especially in Telraam, one of the concerns that emerged, I think it was in Ljubljana and some participants in Spain as well, was about perceived security or privacy issue. You have a camera in your house, you have a sensor that's connected to your network, you don't really know what's going on to your data. So it's important that people, first of all, get to know what data is collected and how it is managed, but also when possible for them to have a voice on how to design a data governance model. So is it possible? And if it's possible, we recommend always to decide together with citizens how the data license should look like. So give them the empowerment to decide what data to share, with whom, and under what condition. With respect to project governance, a tool that we've been using and that's been used also in Leuven in Belgium is what we call the contribution canvas. So people here map or position themselves in terms of how they want to participate, how much dedication they can give to the project, what skills they can bring, and what resources they can bring into the project. So people start defining themselves in terms of their commitment that they want or they're willing to give to the project. And also the project team, so ourselves, were able to design different strategies for different types of participants. That's when data collection starts. So sensors have been delivered and have been measuring ever since in the 5 different cities. And what we recommend to do at this point is really 2 things. One is trying and gather also qualitative data about mobility. So sometimes data provided by the sensor is hard data and it's hard to be interpreted. If there was a protest, an event, data might look different. So what we stimulated users to do was to also take note of events or other episodes that might have influenced the data. So we did that through what we call data journals. So people were writing down on day X, this has happened, and this might have led to these numbers in the sensors. That's very good, and that's very useful at the end when you have to interpret the data. In parallel to this, TML, together with Mobile21, developed an amazing help desk via the Zendesk application, which was available in every language where the case studies were being conducted, and a list of structured FAQs and assistance was provided. Also, it included a system where people could report and the backend management of requests and feedback that we were receiving. This was of fundamental importance for the project because this was really where we needed to put an effort with people that were experiencing problems, and people tend not to be patient, especially when it comes to technology, and they're kind of deterministic in that sense. So if it works, good. If it doesn't work, the technology is not good. So this is where we really had to engage with them and conduct a lot of interactions one-to-one. to keep the community alive and to keep the sensors working. Then it comes to analysis and awareness. Now, data collection lasted for several months in all the different pilot cities. People were continuing to generate data. We were continuing to keep the community engaged through periodic communication, newsletters, data updates, and so on and so forth. And then it comes about the time to do data analysis and awareness. In this case, different, methods have been used across the different cities because it's basically informed from the previous phases, right? So what was the main problem perceived by citizens has to inform how the analysis is being conducted. What's important here is that the analysis must be conducted together with citizens, right? So data discussion sheets, awareness sheets were developed to try and engage citizens in conducting this analysis itself. So there was one part that we conducted independently that was more technical. And then was another part that was asked to be done by citizens. So usually this happened in a way that we were providing them templates to go on the platform and explore their data and draw some conclusions. At this point also, an effort could be done in terms of, and is done in terms of try and leverage the WeCount platform and the data that's been supplied to the platform as a new source for new applications. So that the platform has a public API, so people can download data in near real time in machine readable format. And here the idea is to really stimulate different uses of the data generated. Also at this stage, since you engage citizens, it's time to try and think about impact. So what is the data telling you? How can we act upon the data? And in this sense, every city developed its own strategy. We were given several interviews and survey templates by another work package from UWE within WeCount to investigate that in depth. Finally, a reflection and legacy. So it's important that there is a closing to the project, and it's important to plan for the sustainability of it, for the continuity of it, if that makes sense. So what is the legacy of WeCount in the different case studies? Well, obviously, there is a legacy at the project level, which is obviously the sensor, the improved platform, all the different tools that we've been developing. And this is basically, the legacy aims at one main objective, which is enabling others to undertake a similar experience in an autonomous fashion, meaning give them all the resources they need to do a WeCount-like case studies in their own context, addressing their own issues with their own communities. So obviously here, a big role is played by dissemination effort, but also the idea of trying to think, okay, what can we do with this data? How can we create an action? How can we stimulate change? Here there's a number of tools that we've used. And then we've also conducted in Madrid and Barcelona final action, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So first of all, we used what we call the future times. So this was an instrument that we used with participants in which they were writing basically an article or a headline and an article of a newspaper from 2023. And the idea was to describe a new mobility or sustainable mobility scenario and how we got there from the data collected and analyzed during WeCount. So it tells a story, a future stories of what happens from now to their ideal mobility situation. Leuven and Mobile 21 have developed another instrument in this sense that's called the Rambabble, which I think it's the Flemish for window chat. And this is the idea of developing a methods to stimulate discussions among neighbors, which ultimately are believed to induce to action. And then finally, again, plan for the legacy of the project. One idea was to encapsulate all the resources that we've done within WeCount, and then upload them on Zenodo, on existing platforms, so that others can use them, but also give some sort of acknowledgement to participants, right? So we did a graduation ceremony during the final event. An important thing, and then I finish, because I think I'm out of time, is about what we've done with citizens in Barcelona and Madrid. So at the end of the data analysis and awareness workshop, what we've done was we asked them to brainstorm ideas for a final action. And basically what emerged from that was 3 different ideas. One was about extending the platform, one was about a social media campaign, and one was about an analog campaign done on the street. Then from there, what we did was we sent these 3 ideas for an online voting campaign to the rest of the participants that did not take part of the workshop, as well as to other, beyond what was the WeCount database, contact database. So what resulted was that the analog intervention was the one that was most voted. So we asked who would like to be involved, from which streets, from which sensors that were from the different participants. And with this, we did a series of co-creation workshops, and we came up with this visualization of the data, which we've done back in July, simultaneously in Barcelona and Madrid, which were the places where the Spanish case study took place. That was really interesting. We did an awareness campaign with the participants in their own street, stopping by people, creating awareness about traffic and about WeCount, and hopefully people will catch up, be interested, and keep working on this interesting project. So that was me. I will share the slides, of course, for your consultation. And here's my email. Whatever question, or if you have any doubt, if you want to connect with me, please feel free to send me an email. Once again, apologies I cannot be there today, but Hannelore will respond to your questions. They've been doing amazing in Leuven. And they probably know better than me about WeCount more in general. So once again, thanks everybody, and I wish you a brilliant rest of the day. So thanks.